History is not just a collection of dates and events. It is the unfolding of human spirit, an endless symphony of ambition, creativity, struggle, and discovery. This story is not told with timelines, but with the pulse of humanity woven into every empire, every revolution, every movement of culture and thought. The narrative of civilization spans continents and seas, embracing philosophies, rituals, conflicts, and dreams, all echoing the essence of our shared human experience in a time long past. The earth echoed only with the sounds of nature until humanity began shaping it with intent. From the fertile valleys nestled between great rivers, early societies emerged. Here, language became more than sound, it became memory. Symbols carved into stone and inked on clay began to speak for those long gone. The first cities grew from the soil and stone, guided by the stars and nurtured by rivers. These communities weren't just shelters. They were the birthplaces of politics, trade, spirituality, and culture. Societies began forming structures, not just physical, but social. Leaders emerged, often as intermediaries between the divine and the mortal. Temples rose toward the heavens, their shadows stretching over bustling markets, where spices, fabrics, and stories were exchanged. Humans learned to plant not only crops, but also ideas that grew into philosophies and law. As the human heart longed to understand the unknown, beliefs took shape, not as answers, but as lenses through which life was interpreted. Nature became divine, the sun a god, the moon a goddess, and the wind a whisper of the spirit world. From the coldest steppes to the thickest jungles, sacred stories were passed down, binding tribes and nations into shared visions of existence. These belief systems didn't merely govern prayer, they guided justice, art, science, and community. Some sought harmony, others power. Some offered solace, others discipline, and through them all, human beings sought to define what it means to live, to suffer, to rejoice, and to die with meaning, across vast landscapes. Empires rose not only with conquest, but with innovation and diplomacy. Roads linked cities, and ships threaded oceans with commerce and culture. Architects pushed the limits of imagination, etching greatness into stone. Poets and philosophers pondered the nature of good, the structure of society, and the cosmos itself. Cultural diffusion became inevitable. Ideas traveled farther than armies, influencing how people dressed, spoke, governed, and believed. Civilizations encountered each other, sometimes through peace and admiration, often through war and resistance. Each encounter, violent or harmonious, left a mark that shaped the next evolution of identity. The human journey has never been linear. Periods of great enlightenment were often followed by collapse, but within each downfall lay the seed of renewal. Disasters, whether natural or human-made, brought suffering, but also transformation. New ideologies were born from ashes. Literature preserved what fire could not destroy. Music rose where voices had been silenced. The individual became more visible in society's canvas. Artists, inventors, and revolutionaries stepped forward, not always to lead, but to inspire. Slaves became writers, exiles became heroes, and orphans became kings. Each story contributed to the mosaic of resilience, proving that the human spirit bends but rarely breaks. Curiosity has always been at the heart of progress. From the whisper of a breeze causing the flutter of a leaf to the far-off light of distant stars, humanity questioned, experimented, and learned. Mathematics offered a language for the universe. Medicine sought to conquer suffering. Astronomy invited dreams of the infinite. Knowledge crossed borders. Scholars from different worlds corresponded, disagreed, and collaborated. Libraries became sanctuaries of thought, universities temples of inquiry. In this global dialogue, the identity of knowledge shifted from power to purpose, to heal, to elevate. To understand as power accumulated in palaces and parliaments, so too did resistance in the streets and the fields. Every system that sought control found voices that sought freedom. Revolutions were not always grand. Sometimes they were quiet refusals, courageous songs, or whispered teachings passed in secret. Oppression, no matter how enduring, met its counterforce in hope. The powerless organized, the silenced wrote, the outcast dreamed. New models of governance were imagined. Justice was redefined not as punishment, but as equity, and the fight for dignity became a thread that stitched together distant peoples with a common yearning. Trade routes became cultural arteries. A garment in one part of the world bore the influence of 3 continents. Languages borrowed from each other, religions shared symbols, and foods blended into new flavors. Migration voluntary or forced reshaped demographics, ideas, and power. Structures taught this interconnectedness, bred both wonder and conflict. The gifts of exploration were shadowed by exploitation. But even amid conquest, culture often survived. It adapted, resisted, or blended, never entirely erased. In this tangled web, humanity found not just difference, but commonality. The pursuit of reason sparked radical shifts in how societies perceived themselves. No longer content with tradition alone, thinkers challenged dogma, kings, and even the gods. The individual emerged, not just as a subject, but as a sovereign being. Debates on liberty, equality, and rights became central. Science expanded, and so did skepticism. Machines redefined labor. Industry reshaped cities. With new power came new consequences: environmental degradation, alienation, and conflict. But also, possibilities to reach across oceans in moments. To heal diseases once fatal, to record and revisit voices long gone. With new technologies came new identities. The boundaries between nations blurred, and yet divisions deepened. Information became a tool of liberation and manipulation. Humanity entered a new dialogue not just with each other, but with the planet itself. Climate, culture, and conscience became interwoven. Voices once marginalized now found platforms. Indigenous stories resurfaced. Forgotten histories were rewritten. Justice movements reimagined the past, not to erase it, but to understand it more fully. Progress was redefined not as dominance, but as coexistence. History is a living entity. It breathes in the choices we make and the stories we tell. Though its path is not marked by dates here, its rhythm pulses with the timeless dance of aspiration and reflection. In its folds lie warnings and wisdom, wounds and wonders. It does not ask for reverence, but remembrance. Not as chronology, but as conscience.